everything, all kinds of crazy stuff happening in the world. And, crazy things happening with us, crazy things. I mean, it's just an interesting time to be alive. And I've said that many times, and that's what makes this program work. That's what makes this program successful, is how interesting the world is, how refreshing it is to see both the good and bad in the world, and to point out some unique things in the world that the other talk shows, maybe even the mainstream media, will ignore and avoid. And that's what makes me me, and that's what hopefully has you tuning in every night. And this is something that I'm very proud of. It's something that I thank my crew for. It's something I thank you for keeping us lit for all these years we've been on the air. A unique view. And that's exactly what you're going to get, is a unique view tonight. Because after listening to Donald Trump speak today, I was particularly disturbed by how the mainstream media dealt with his words. Now, many of the talking heads, there were many of them that bent over backwards to give double meaning to his speech. I realized they were ignoring some of the scariest words I've ever heard at an inauguration, and they didn't come from Donald Trump. Okay, so, Donald Trump said some things. All I heard from the media was, "Oh, it's bleak, it's not positive, blah, 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 blah." Okay, I have to admit, it was, there were a lot of things that he was saying that, made you go, ooh. But see, that's what a president's supposed to do. He wrote it himself. But we know, and we all know, that even with Barack Obama, when he was, giving his speeches, when he was campaigning and when he was speaking, he used neuro-linguistic programming and trigger words, because neuro-linguistic programming and trigger phrases and words have now become part of our political vocabulary. Words like collusion and corporatism and authoritarian. These are all words that used to fill pages of Cold War spy novels, not the talking points of the American political structure. But now they're here. Now, it's arguable that we can go all the way back to Ronald Reagan and the political structure that existed with Ronald Reagan, the whispers in the ear of Reagan from CIA op George H.W. Bush, who I'm sure will be in the news soon. I mean, if not sooner, he's not doing well. He's sick and he's dying, and many people were worried that he would die on the day of the inaugural, but it didn't happen. And I think the whole intelligence operative wording and phrasing has been going on since the times of Reagan and Bush Sr., moving right along into the Clinton era. And then, of course, Barack Obama was a master at neuro-linguistic programming. In other words, there were a lot of other ones that, when we look at words, political words, that crept into the political vocabulary, the political structure. A lot of them add to the conversion of Americans to accepting a despotic way of life. And these words include hegemony, nationalism, war, police state, empire, and New World Order. You didn't hear those words in Trump's speeches at all. There was no talk of a New World Order, no talk of globalism. It was all about America, 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 America first. But we have, over time, been conditioned to accept the cold reality of limits on civil liberties, as opposed to the constant attaining and securing of the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. And that, of course, is in the preamble of the U.S. Constitution, is the bulwark to our way of life that should be protected and not trivialized. Words like tyranny and fascism, while applied to Barack Obama and his administration, seem to have migrated very quickly to Trump's administration, even though it hasn't even been an administration until today. So I don't know how we have protesters in the streets right now that are protesting a fascist dictatorship that hasn't even taken off yet. And we don't even know of it being fascist or tyrannical until we see the shadow fall upon Washington, if Donald Trump brings that shadow with him. The definition of fascism has some academic variance, but it is essentially collusion among the so-called kleptocracy, authoritarian regime, and government, controlled by a media, controlled in our schoolrooms, our classrooms. And this type of despotic leadership is only possible with the nationalistic public accepting policies of war, empire, and limited civil and political rights. At the moment, I can tell you that from what I've seen during the inauguration speeches, you can't apply those things to Donald Trump, although flag burners and protesters of Trump would disagree, which makes for some oddly applied mind control from some underhanded source. Now, where's that mind control coming from? Is it just his words? Was he doing the wrong type of neurolinguistic programming? Was it the words that he used today in the inaugural speech? A constitutional republic is a political philosophy of limited government, separated powers with checks and balances to ensure the federal government's power stays limited within the Constitution, protected civil liberties, and elected representatives responsible to the people who retain the most political power. Now, what I'm saying here is nothing new. What I'm saying is fundamental, and to others it may not be beneficial to know or to even care about what now seems to be marginalized as nationalist fanaticism in the face of what seems to be an unseen threat that has been effective in the conversion process to the altered and decimated constitutional republic. When change, the word change, hope and change, this was the marketing buzzwords for Barack Obama during his election campaign. We were oblivious to the idea that it wasn't just a slogan for a man who was called an inexperienced senator from Illinois. It was a watered-down word for the act of reconceptualizing or revising what America was. And this was not just the mission of one party, but the objective of both political parties. It was an act to reverse the paradigm in favor of the powerful and their ability to govern and act without the interference of the people. What Donald Trump said today at the inauguration was both inspiring and confounding. It was also, in part, terrifying. Only because it wasn't just Donald Trump who was exhorting an idea of a positive future. It was Donald Trump reminding us that our past hasn't been all that wonderful. And he's been criticized for this. But it wasn't just Donald Trump who was saying words that seemed to be apocalyptic or frightening. You may want to pay attention to what the clergy were saying when they were praying today. And I'm going to point that out to you, and it may not sit well with people, but you have to understand.